Hello, everybody. My name is Kate Wexell, and I'm the founder of the Compass College Consulting. So today is my monthly tea time. And so that's when I sit here and I just have like a genuine, real chat with you guys about something related to college and my experience there. So we got some nice little lemon tea in my cup. I'm really excited. I'm wearing my lucky shirt. So this was a shirt that belonged to my great grandmother and it's probably from like the 90s or something like that. But it definitely makes me stand out whenever I wear it in public to competitions or presentations or things like that. Anyway, not too long ago, I was reading a Reddit post about somebody who's in college, and they were just saying, like, wow, college makes me feel so lonely, and it just makes me feel so sick of people because there is literally no privacy. And I remember thinking the exact same thing whenever I was a freshman in college. So I remember I grew up very, very privileged in the sense that in St. Louis, the housing market is completely cheap, like it is dirt cheap. And so I grew up in this big, big, beautiful house that now that I live in San Francisco and I see houses that are a similar size costing like $3 million versus like the $200,000 that the house costs. I'm like, my mind is blown, to say the least. But I was able to have my own bedroom. I, for the most part, had my own bathroom growing up after a certain time. So then going to college, that was like my first time ever having to live in the same room as somebody. And it was one of my best friends from high school that I was being roommates with, and she and I had already coordinated, and we wanted the exact same color scheme for things, and we both went to bed at a similar time. She was very quiet. I didn't like to spend a lot of time in the dorm, and the most that would ever happen was just that she would be a little bit loud with her video games sometimes, right? Like, in all honesty, it was kind of perfect roommate situation, at least from the perspective of like us living together as cohabitants in the same one tiny room that was not even the size of like a living room, you know? But I remember thinking after a few weeks, like, I used to sing and dance around, and I used to, you know, read books at whatever time of day I wanted in my room, and I used to be able to just have time to, like, sit there in peace without thinking of, like, "Oh, there's a person twitching and moving next to me." And I felt so guilty about it because it's like, "Well, isn't this how people are supposed to live? What about whenever I'm married?" Right? And then you have to sleep in the same room as somebody else every single day for the rest of your life, at least if you choose. Right, and it's like, how selfish could I be? And so I thought about that, and at the same time, though, I still just felt like no matter where I go, there is somebody there. My roommate, she didn't like to leave the room. Like, I loved leaving the room, I loved exploring campus, but she never wanted to leave the room. So it was like whenever I left in the morning, she would still be there. Whenever I came back, she was still there. Right? Like, there was never a second that I could just be in peace. Even in the hallway for my dorm building, that was where all of our showers and bathrooms were, like, they were all stalls. It wasn't just like 4 people are sharing this one bathroom, it was like every single girl on my floor was sharing that bathroom. So you couldn't even, like, go into the shower or go into the bathroom and, like, have some privacy for a few minutes. It was all just, like, you can hear the person next to you. You can see the shampoo and the soap suds on the ground from the person showering next to you. Like, you can't sing in the shower, you can't do anything, right? You can't play your music, even though all of us still did, right? Like, everything was about being mindful of every single other person around you, and that was something that I definitely wasn't used to, and it drove me crazy. It's like you walk outside, there are people there every single second, every single minute of the day. Like, you go to your classes, there are people there. Even if you don't go to your classes, there are still people walking around. It's like there's never just one solitary moment, and I remember just hating that. Like, I told my parents, like, "Hey, can I please have my car so that I can, at the very least, like, go sit in my car every once in a while and just, like, think?" But then as time went on, something sort of changed and shifted in me, and especially now that I live in San Francisco, I think that I've gotten over this by now, at least for the most part. Like, it still somewhat bothers me if I'm always thinking about like, oh, there's somebody else in the room. There's somebody else that I need to be mindful of with roommates. But after a while, you get used to it and you start to appreciate like, oh, actually, there's somebody else in this room that whenever I'm sick, they'll go get me crackers, they'll go get me Gatorade, they'll help me. There's somebody here whenever I come home at the end of the day that I can check in with them and say like, "Oh, hey, how was your day?" And they'll ask, "Oh, it was great. How was your day?" And then you can sit there and talk about it. And so I was sort of thinking after reading that Reddit post, like, what would my advice be to people who are going through that same situation? Because I feel like most people would go through that and would be at least aware of the lack of privacy. And I guess like you have to just learn how to accept other people. And I think that it ends up being for the better, right? Like when you're outside and you're walking around, you know that there's always somebody there that if something bad happens, they can protect you or they're at least witnessing what's going on. There are interesting people to watch, interesting things to see. Right? Whether it's good or bad, like it's a story. And consider other people as different stories and elements in your life, right? So even if I'm walking down the streets here outside of my apartment, it's like I'll see a little family walking along and I can think like, oh, are they going to a restaurant? Are they going to do something fun as a family? What if there's tension in the family? What if there's something bad going on? What's their little story? And you get to just make it up in your head. Or say that you're walking past somebody and they're doing something interesting or unique that you've never seen before. It's like, oh, well, now there's like a little component of the universe that you've just unlocked. And then with thinking about privacy just in general, what I ended up doing and what I still do is I'll just go for walks. Because even though there are still people while you're going on walks, you no longer have the obligation unless you run into somebody that you know, and you can sort of mitigate that depending on where you walk to. But there's no obligation to anybody. If you're sitting in your dorm room and your roommate's there, it's like, okay, well, they can just start talking to you at any time. Right, and they can disturb your peaceful thoughts. But if you're walking around, it's like you now have that agency, you have that free will. And I think that that's a lot of what privacy is desired for, right? Like we are social creatures. So why would we ever actually want to be alone? Doesn't that seem to be against our biology, right? So, is it actually that we want to be alone, or is it that we want the ability to not be responsible to anything for a moment? Is it that we want to just be responsible for our own thoughts and have the space mentally to process things? And so, by doing that, by going for walks or going to the gym or like finding some solitary hobby or routine, or even just a place where you can like read a book, write something in a journal where it's like clear that you're engaged in something and people are not going to bother you, like just find that. And then you'll be able to sort of let the rest of it all go. And yeah, like just take a look at your surroundings and think hard about like what is it that you're actually disliking? Are you disliking that other people exist and are moving around you and that they're always there? Or are you disliking that you have that responsibility to the world in that moment? Right. And then think about how can you mitigate that? Honestly, even now in my adult life, I'll still kind of do that where it's like if I say don't want to talk to my roommate at that moment, like I just close my door. And of course in a dorm room, you don't really have the freedom to do that. But what I would do if I were still at college and I was still living in a dorm room is it's like, just leave the room, go shop for groceries, go walk down the street, take a lap, you know, go read a book outside of your dorm building or work on your homework outside of your dorm building, lay in the grass, right? And so I know now with my roommate, like I'll say that I really just don't want to interact, but she's super sweet. Then I'll just like go to the grocery store, go for a walk, go to the park, go ride a bike, right? Like something that I can just do for myself. Anyway, I hope that this was helpful.